So then moving on, what was next for you?
I just kind of went into sessions. So I just fell into doing session work. And then I just ended up doing it for about 28 years,
Wow, that's a lot of sessions, Neil.
Yeah, I mean, but people always seem to think that when you're doing session work, you're always busy, but it wasn't the case,
Yeah.
I mean, there was months and months when the phone didn't ring.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult sometimes, and I know that if I was up in London and I wanted to do more sessions, then I'd probably do more. When you're doing the sessions where someone gives you a chord chart and wants you to do a certain thing, it's like, well, this is becoming a job for me.
Yeah,
I never wanted it to become a job.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pursuing my own thing now, and that's starting to make, a few ripples in Europe, and so I'm going to continue doing that, and I feel so much more happy now that I've actually pursued my own solo career,
Yes, and now was No God Like Rock and Roll, was that your first solo album?
No, I had an album out before that. It was called No Self Control, but I mean, this was around the time I was still with Robbie Williams.
Yeah.
It took me 4 years to make that album, only because I hadn't sang for 10, 15 years. And
not even backing when you're on stage with people like Robbie Williams, you didn't do backing singing?
No, well, I remember when I first went to the first rehearsal after I'd played on Sing While You're Winning and Escapology by Robbie Williams. I remember meeting Rob, and basically he asked me if I'd like to be in his band. I went to the first rehearsal, and I remember one of the first things Guy Chambers said to me, he said, "Do you do backing vocals?" I said, "No, I don't." because I wasn't confident with my voice. And it was only when I started doing a solo album, the first solo album was going to be an instrumental guitar album.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine's a guy called Steve Torch, who wrote Believe by Cher. And he's worked with Hall & Oates, and he wrote On a Night Like This with Kylie Minogue, amongst many others. And he said, "Well, why don't you sing?" I said, "I haven't sang for 10 years. He said, "Give it a go." So we wrote a song together, and I ended up singing. And the more I did, the more I got my confidence back about singing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until No God Like Rock and Roll that I felt quite confident with my voice, really.
From somebody looking in, you think, how can you not be confident when you're that good? And I'm looking at pictures here of you, Neil, with Christy Berg and with Robbie Williams. And there's one here which I absolutely love, where Christy Berg is playing your guitar with you. You're doing the finger.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's fantastic. Tell me about what's behind that one picture there. He just started wanting to play the guitar with you?
Yeah, I mean, basically, he would do that. Well, he still does that. He on one of his songs, it's the last song of the set, High on Emotion, and there's a big kind of finale at the end, and he comes over and pretends to play my guitar, basically.
Okay.
That's the story behind it, really.
I also saw with Robbie Williams where he's almost bowing to your guitar playing, and I thought, wow, that must be quite something to be playing with these guys and for them to just recognise you there on stage for your ability and your musical talent. That must be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fantastic. Working with, playing in Robbie's band for 10 years was the most amazing thing that it's really happened to me as a session guitar player, because I mean, one that I played on a lot of the albums, so I was playing my own parts on the stage. And, obviously, like the Private Jets, 5-star hotel lifestyle was phenomenal, and getting paid very well for it, which is brilliant.
It's seductive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, the last tour I did the proper tour was in 2006. And, you're kind of on stage some nights, and, there's a sea of people, like 80,000 people.
Yeah.
Weird things go through your mind. I think, well, is this as good as it gets? That you can't really go anywhere from here, and sometimes you kind of start feeling a little bit kind of depressed about it, because you're thinking, well, no, this is it, isn't it? How can it get better than this?
And and then there's the opposite as well. There's the gaps between. And after the first couple of days rest, you think, oh, do you know what? I want to be doing something else now. And that's the tough part of the business that you're in. The same with acting. That's why we have, I think, so many issues with alcohol and drugs and things like that to cope with those ups and downs. You've got to be made of strong stuff to be able to cope with that.
My dad always say everything in moderation, Neil.
Yeah, that's right. If you can.
And I go to the gym like 4 or 5 times a week as well. So I hope that cancels it out.
I think so. Not only that, but it's good for the memory, and it's also it keeps you going. I mean, it keeps you fit. You've got to be fit to do what you do.
Oh yeah.
So now you moved on. You got a band together, and you released your first album. Then you did No God Like Rock and Roll.
Rock and Roll, yeah.
And that was played extensively, and I must say, sometimes I don't like, just straight rock, but I really did like that, and I liked the title track. You must have had a lot of fun doing that tour.
I mean, No God Like Rock and Roll, it was written, about 8 years ago. We just finished the tour with Rob, and me and Jerry went over to Germany to do some writing. A guy called Dan Farron, who plays drums for the Buzzcocks.
Oh, yeah, I remember the Buzzcocks.
He's a great singer and a great frontman.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with this thing, No God Like Rock and Roll. We ended up writing that together, and then Robbie Williams did a version of it.
Well, now there's a compliment.
So basically, I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to put it on my album. The whole thing about No God Like Rock and Roll was, I grew up with the likes of T-Rex, Status Quo, and of course Gary Glitter. If it wasn't for like Status Quo, Slade, T-Rex, and Gary Glitter, I wouldn't be here now. Talking to you about it.
Now I've got to ask you, you've played with some of the best in the world. You've toured all over the world. Is there any one gig, any one band, any one point that really stood out for you and you thought this is probably the best night of my life?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are two, funny enough.
Go on.
I mean, going back to that, is this as good as it's ever going to get, playing with Robbie every night. In 2003, I did the three nights at Nebworth with him.
Oh.
And there was 120,000 people there.
Oh, my God. Weren't you nervous getting on stage?
When you're on stage, you couldn't see anything but people out there. I mean, you couldn't see any piece of grass or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the main thing, and I never, ever thought after that I would top that. But just over a year ago, on Boxing Day, I had a phone call from a friend saying a band has just dropped out in this thing in the Ukraine, and they want an international act. And it's a New Year's Eve gig. There's going to be 50,000 people there. Would you like to do it? And I thought, I can't say no. I mean, 50,000 people, they'll, so I ended up going, but the band were a little bit worried because this was the time when everything was starting to kick off there, and the show was going to be in Euromaidan, where they had all the problems,
Yes.
So I ended up doing it, and it wasn't 50,000 people, it was 500,000 people.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it was 500,000 people, and it was televised live.
Yeah.
And we hadn't rehearsed for 3 months, so we just went on stage and did it,
And it worked.
And it was fantastic. I mean, doing something like that with my own band, 500,000 people.
That was incredible, isn't it?
I'm not saying that they were there to see me, but it's still. I mean, playing in front of 500,000 people with you doing your.
That is as good as it gets.
It was phenomenal for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what sort of reception did you get?
They loved it. They seemed to really enjoy it. I mean, because it was someone coming from the West that really put themselves out and came, what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, it wasn't a show that you were going to make money from. It was, they basically paid all my expenses, and a lot of people would have wanted paying, I suppose,
Yeah, to do that. But, sometimes it's not about that, is it, Neil? It's about, doing it and being in the music.
I'm back in Ukraine, and I've been back there a few times now and done a couple of festivals, so it's good. It was a good thing for me to do.
Yeah. Now, coming on from No God Like Rock and Roll, you did a tour with that album?
Yes, and I'm still touring it. It was released just over a year ago.
Yeah.
I'm still touring that with the band, and I'm going to be touring it again next year.
Okay.
And I'm kind of writing another band album as we speak. I've got about 4 or 5 finished songs recorded and mastered now.
Okay. And your latest album is called, did I hear it, Silverwing?
That's right, yeah.
And you sent me some songs on that, and I actually listened to them. That was why I was holding up a little bit to get in touch with you, because I wanted to hear them.
Sure, no problem.
Keep It Coming, Baby, Kind of Crazy Glue, and There's Always Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that was that I was going to do just a live album, a kind of full-on album with the live stuff being the bonus tracks, really.
Okay. And where were they recorded, the live tracks?
The live tracks were recorded in Essen, in a place, a club called The Grend.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it became like half studio album and half live.
Yeah, I like that, because it kind of completes the circle. It's not only studio work, but it's got some live.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And the reaction, you can hear the crowd, and that's part of what music is all about,
Yeah, exactly. And, it's going to be released at the end of this month. I mean, I'm just doing it myself. It's not with a label or anything.
Mm-hmm. So let's just talk about that, Neil. We know that there's been a tremendous change in the music business, and we've got online downloading now, which never existed in any way, shape or form 10 years ago. Is that seriously affecting, what a musician can get for his music?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, unless if you're a very, very big artist, I mean, I'm sure you make quite good money out of downloading and stuff. I've been going as a solo artist now for 4 years, and downloads equate to nothing for me.
Yeah,
it's pennies.
Yes.
And the way I kind of sell my albums is when I play live. Sell them after the shows.
And I think that's the difference. I think it's what you can do live, the gigs that you do, and you're selling your albums. But if the gig is good, they'll do that.
But I mean, I go out and have a chat with everybody and sign the albums and stuff, and it's nice because you get to meet the people. Because a lot of the bigger artists can't do that, or them don't want to either.
And it makes them stronger fans. It draws them to you. A lot of your work seems to be overseas, though. And you've mentioned Germany, Essen, quite a few times. Is that music scene? It sounds incredibly vibrant. That there's a lot going on in Germany with music.
I didn't choose Germany. I can't get arrested in the UK. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I love it. That's funny. Maybe that should be one of your songs on your album. I can't get arrested.
Yeah, I know. It's very funny.
Sandy and Mark are huge fans of yours, and Dee Anderson as well.
Yeah, they played my single "Walk Away" a hell of a lot. I remember.
That's right, and I've heard that many times. And I don't know whether I told you, but we have a place in Indianapolis called the Slippery Noodle, and it's a very famous blues bar, and we have people from all over the country, and it's probably one of the most famous blues bars in the USA. And you go on the beach somewhere and you'll see, Slippery Noodle T-shirts with people. One day I'm hoping that you're going to be able to come to Chicago and come and stay with us, or stay in whatever you want to do, but actually do a gig at the Slippery Noodle, and it is a fantastic place to play.
Do you know what? I mean, it's funny you should say that, Tony, because, I mean, the No God Like Rock and Roll album, I mean, is completely, I feel it's completely right for America. I think it would do really well. It's got a slight English quirkiness about it, but it ticks all the boxes, and it's just getting it to the right people.
You're absolutely right, and to promote it here in the States, it would do incredibly well for you. Well, listen, it was fantastic talking to you, and I knew it would be, because I've been looking at your pictures, I've seen some of the things that you've done, and it really was a pleasure talking with you, Neil.
Oh, that's very kind.
And we'll talk again. It doesn't have to be a one-hit wonder for us. I'd love to catch up with you again. So in the meantime, would you like to say goodbye to Sandy and Mark and everyone at GloTIME Radio?
Right, I'd like to say goodbye to Sandy and Mark at GloTIME Radio, all the listeners, and I hope you enjoy my tracks from my new album Silverwing, and of course my band album No God Like Rock and Roll, that I'm sure Mark and Sandy will be playing a lot of.
Oh, you betcha. Neil, great talking with you. Such a pleasure.
Brilliant, mate. Well, nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, speak to you soon.
All right, cheers, Tony.
Cheers, Neil. Bye-bye. Oh, you betcha. Neil, great talking with you. Such a pleasure.
Brilliant, mate. Well, nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, speak to you soon.
All right, cheers, Tony.
Cheers, Neil. Bye-bye.